thought I'd start by I'm talking about the Reformation in Europe 500 years ago, and then also how it influenced Taiwan.
我今天要谈论的是500年前在欧洲的宗教改革如何影响台湾。
And I thought I'd start by just saying, what is Reformation?
那一开始我要先定义什么是宗教改革。
Just Reformation in general.
就是改革是什么意思
？I don't know what kind of connotation it has in Mandarin.
我不知道在中文这个字你会想到什么。
Sometimes it might sound like a bad thing, like revolution.
那有时候改革你听起来会觉得不太好，然后不太好，很像革命。
But actually, what it's talking about is seeing how a society has changed in bad ways and trying to help the society come back to good ways, whatever area needs to be reformed.
那其实改革的意思正面来讲，就是如果一个社会它有很多部分是败坏的，那么要将这个社会导回正轨，让它在各方面都能够越来越好。
And this is what happened in Europe 500 years ago.
这就是500年前在欧洲发生的事情。
And it was a very huge thing.
这是一件大事。
You might think religions aren't that big a deal. You know, in Taiwan we have so many religions.
你可能会觉得宗教根本不是什么了不起的事情，因为在台湾有一大堆不同的宗教。
But at that time, it caused huge wars in Europe.
那当时在欧洲，因为宗教的缘故，引发了很大的战争。
But because of this Reformation, so many good things changed in society and also in the churches, Christian churches.
那因为这个改革，在当时的社会和教会都有许多好的改变发生。
Now you see, around in the circle are these letters.
你看到那个圆圈有一些英文字母。
You probably maybe thought they're English, but they're not English.
那你可能会以为那是英文，但其实不是英文。
It's Latin.
是拉丁文。
So it's like if you were looking in Chinese characters, but you were reading the classical Chinese.
那就像你看到中文字，但其实那是文言文。
But every single one of these phrases has a very important meaning for what happened 500 years ago.
那它每一个词汇都代表一个非常重要的意义，而且这个意义跟500多年前的宗教改革是有关的。
We'll talk about that later.
我们待会会更多谈这些。
Do you know who this person is?
你知道这是谁吗？
Martin Luther. Everybody knows it. Do you know why he was called Martin Luther King?
你知道为什么他叫做马丁路德金恩吗？
He was not born with that name.
他的本名不是那个。
His father went to Europe to a meeting and found out about another man named Martin Luther.
他爸去欧洲开会的时候，发现另外一个人叫马丁。
And he was so impressed with Martin Luther that he changed his own name and the name of his son to Martin Luther King.
所以他发现这个马丁路德有很卓越的贡献，所以他就把自己的名字和他儿子的名字都改成马丁路德。
That's him.
就是这个马丁路德。
Big chubby guy.
胖胖的。
So Martin Luther King Jr. did a reformation in American society in the 60s.
所以在1960年代，马丁路德金恩在美国的社会做了很大的改革。
Martin Luther also did a different kind of reformation.
这个胖胖的马丁路德也做了一个不一样的改革。
In 500 years ago.
在500年前。
And there's something he did, especially on October 31st of 1517, that is celebrated.
他特别在1517年的10月31号做了一件特别的事，我们基督徒也庆祝他在那天所做的事。
And it represents a social movement that happened over several hundred years, but everybody celebrates the social movement specifically on that day.
那是几百年的变革，但是我们是特别为着那一天10月31号他所做的事而庆祝。
So I want to give you the background of why the social movement developed, and then later I'll talk about what it was and how it influenced Taiwan.
那我会简单介绍这个变革到底是什么，以及这个变革如何影响欧洲跟台湾。
Okay. You know what that is, right?
你知道这是什么
？This was 2,000 years ago.
这是2000年前。
The Han Dynasty.
汉朝。
And Taiwan, you notice, is not part of the Han Dynasty.
那台湾它并不是当时汉朝的一部分。
At that time, it was all Austronesian people.
那时候很多都是原住民南岛人。
And a lot of scholars today think it was the original homeland of the Austronesian people that was called Hawaii Key.
那很多的学者认为台湾是许多南岛人的起源的地方。
And you know of Hawaii, right?
你知道夏威夷吗？
But they have a name for the place they originally come from that's called Hawaii Key.
那他们的原本的名字就是从 Hawaii Key 这个。
And that's where the people came from. So everybody thinks it's Taiwan now.
所以现在很多人都认为说是台湾就是他们的起源地。
But at the time of the Han Dynasty and Hawaii Key, in Asia, there was another empire in Europe and Africa.
那在汉朝同样的时期，有另外一个王朝在亚洲，
And also North
还有
Africa.
北非。
And the Han Dynasty called the empire Dajin. Qin.
那他们会称那个汉朝大秦。
And we call it the Roman Empire now.
他们会称罗马帝国大秦，那就现在就是当时的罗马帝国。
Now, you see the little green dot there, right?
你看到绿色的点，
Jesus was born in the Roman Empire around 4 BC.
耶稣是在大概西元前4年的时候出生在罗马帝国。
And the people that celebrate the birth of Jesus all around today is Christmas.
那全世界每一个基督徒都会在圣诞节庆祝耶稣的诞生。
And next month, of course, we're talking about Christmas.
下个月我们会有一个演讲是在讲圣诞节。
But when Jesus became an adult, he began to preach in the area of the Roman Empire.
当耶稣成年之后，他就在罗马帝国那个地区传讲传
He
道。
didn't just preach moral things.
他不只是讲一些道德的伦理的法则，
He said something was really shocking to all the people at that time.
他讲的一些东西是让当时人非常的惊讶。
He preached that he is God,
他传讲，他宣告他自己就是上帝，
the one who created the world.
就是创造世界的上
That
帝
he。was the one that was there before anything existed.
他意思就是说，在世界还没有存在以前，他就已经存在了。
And he claimed that he took on human nature to represent people, mankind.
他也说，他成为一个真正的人来代表全人类。
And he claimed that he was going to take the punishment for their sin.
他也说，他来是要代替世人来承受犯罪的惩罚，
So people could have eternal life.
所以人们就能够因着信耶稣而有
And he
永恒的生
predicted
命
he would be executed.
啊，
He predicted he would be executed.
他预测自己会被处决，
And then he said he was going to rise from the dead.
他也说他会从死里复活，
This is what he said.
这就是他所说的。
And he did get arrested, and the Romans actually took him and executed him.
他真的被罗马人逮捕，然后罗马人也把他处死了。
At that time, this was the worst criminal punishment for anybody to have was this cross. They would nail people to the cross and just let them hang there until they died. It was very suffering.
那在当时罗马帝国，这种刑罚是用来惩罚最可恶的犯人，他们会把人钉在十字架上，然后让他慢慢的等死，是非常痛苦。
But of course, you notice if you see any Christian church, they always put the cross on it. But that's to represent what happened 2,000 years ago.
那如果你有留意的话，几乎每一个基督教教会都会有个十字架在那边，那个十字架就是纪念当年耶稣他为人的罪被钉在十字架上。
And after he died, he was buried in a tomb of stone, a cave.
他死了之后，他就被埋在一个石头做的坟墓，一个墓穴里面。
And his disciples reported that after the third day, he rose from the tomb, that they found the tomb was empty.
那他死掉之后3天，他的门徒就是他的学生就提到那坟墓空了。
And 500 witnesses said they saw him.
那有500个见证人说到他们看见那复活的耶稣。
And that's why Christians celebrate Easter. You've probably heard of that, right?
那这也是为什么基督徒会庆祝另外一个节日叫做复活节，你可能有听过。
But what's significant about that, what happened, is something Jesus told the disciples after he rose from the dead.
那这件事有一个很重要的意义在于，在耶稣复活以后，他告诉他的学生、他的门徒一件重要的事。
He told them this verse.
耶稣
It's written in the book of Matthew.
那耶稣告诉他门徒的那件事情呢，就写在新约圣经的马太福音。
He told them they have to go all over the world and teach what he has taught them.
耶稣告诉他的门徒、他的学生说：“你们也要去全世界去教导其他的人我所教导你们的事情。”
And this is why Christianity spread in the Roman Empire.
这就是为什么当年基督教会在整个罗马帝国里头传开。
The Romans did not like this religion.
罗马人那时候并不喜欢这个宗教，
And they were told, you cannot talk.
那他们告诉当时的基督徒说：“你不要去讲。”
There was no freedom of religion back then.
那时候并没有什么宗教自由，
But the Christians kept talking,
但基督徒却坚持持续的去传
and a
教。
lot of them, over 200 years, were arrested and many executed. And some of them, this is a depiction of a leopard attacking a person. They would put them for everybody to see and send wild animals after them.
那当时有大概200多年的时间，基督徒会因为他们自己的信仰的关系被逮捕、被杀害、被处决。那甚至有的人会被推到这个罗马竞技场里面被野兽攻击。那这张图片就是豹在攻击基督徒，然后旁边就有很多观众在看基督徒被攻击。
And I think the reason they were willing to do this is because of what they believed.
那当时的基督徒之所以冒着生命危险也愿意去传他们的信仰，就是因为他们所相信的内容。
And I'll just let you read this in Mandarin for them. I think when they were facing death, this verse comforted them.
那当这些基督徒在面对死亡的时候，这段圣经的经文就安慰了他们。那我来念，他说到：“因为我深信，无论是死是生，是天使，是掌权的，是有能的，是现在的事，是将来的事，是高处的，是低处的，是别的受造之物，都不能叫我们与神的爱隔绝。这爱是在我们的主基督耶稣里。”
So this was their motivation.
这就是他们的动机，他们的动力。
And they were willing to die.
他们愿意死亡。
Now, after over 300 years, the persecution finally stopped.
那大概在受苦300多年之后，那逼迫终于停止了。
I think one reason is Christians were very different from the society around them.
那其中的原因是，当时的基督徒跟他们周围的社会的人是非常不一样的。
When a plague would hit a city, the Christians would take care of the sick.
当一个瘟疫疾病蔓延整个城市的时候，基督徒会愿意主动去照顾那些病人。
And the people used to leave babies out to die if they didn't want a baby, and the Christian would go and adopt the baby.
那当时的人们有个不好的传统，就是如果他们不想要自己的小孩，就会让自己的小孩在野外等死。但那时候的基督徒就会愿意去收留、照顾、收养这些孩子。
And they were not afraid to get sick.
他们不怕因为照顾病人而生病，
And they weren't afraid to be killed.
他们也不怕死。
I think because they experienced God's love, they wanted to love other people.
因为他们经历上帝的爱，所以他们也想要爱别人。
And these Christians, they had a hope of eternal life and that they would one day be resurrected and Jesus came back. This is all motivation for them.
而他们也知道，如果有一天他们死了，那当耶稣再来的时候，他们会复活，所以他们就有勇气来面对死亡。
Now, when the Reformation happened, there were also persecutions, and the people then had the same kind of hope that the Christians in the Roman Empire did.
那当500多年前的宗教改革发生的时候，那时候基督徒也因为宗教改革而受到很大的逼迫，会丧失生命，而他们也拥有同样永恒的盼望，就跟当时在罗马帝国基督徒一样，所以他们愿意勇敢。
The persecution stopped by this guy.
那当时的逼迫是被这个人所提。
He's a Roman Emperor Constantine. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
我不知道你有没有听过他的名字，他是当时罗马帝国的皇帝，叫君士坦丁。
But they say that he had a dream that if he used the symbol you see up there on his flags, that he would conquer with his armies.
那有一个传说是说，君士坦丁他相信，只要他去打仗的时候，他的旗子上面挂着右上角那个标志，他就会打胜仗。
You can see on his money, he had the symbol put on the money too.
你可以看到他发行的钱币上也有同样的记号。
But the symbol is 2 Greek letters,
那个记号是2个希腊文的字，希腊文的字母
Rho and Chi.
肉跟开。
They are the first 2 letters of the word for Christ.
那肉跟开是基督这个字的希腊文的第一个字母。
And so after he won and conquered the Roman Empire, he was said he's going to tolerate Christians and nobody can attack them anymore.
当他统治整个罗马帝国之后，他就下了一道命令，就是不准任何人去欺负基督徒。
Really strange event, right?
很奇怪，对吗？
Well, after the Roman Empire accepted Christians, sometimes that wasn't a good thing for the Christians.
那罗马帝国当然他们之后接纳了基督教，但有时候这并不是一件好事。
Because over time, Christians became very wealthy, and particularly the churches. All these politicians donated money to the churches.
因为那时候教会变得越来越有钱，那很多政客就会捐钱给教会。
Because the emperor supported them, so we better support them too, right?
因为皇帝支持教会嘛，所以我们政客想要捞好处，当然也要支持教会。
People are the same all over the world.
因为全世界人都一样腐败他们。
And eventually, the Roman Empire fell, but the church continued to grow.
那之后罗马帝国垮台了，但是教会却持续的增长。
And people started to look at the head of the church in the city of Rome to follow that person.
那当时的持续的跟随教会的领袖，
The one that was the head of the church in the city of Rome.
他们就是跟随当时在这个罗马这个城市教会最高领袖。
And the Pope began to act like the emperor.
那个最高领袖就是所谓的教宗或者是教皇，
I'm not
开始
sure.
变得像皇帝
I'm
一样
not sure which Pope this is, but if you notice how many crowns he has on his head.
那我不确定这个教宗是谁，那你注意一下，还有几个皇冠。
He actually put himself above any other king.
那他实际上把自己看得比任何其他的国王还要更高一点。
And they got a lot of money.
他拿到很多钱，
And they built this, which is a very beautiful building, was designed by Michelangelo, that was built in Rome.
那他在罗马是一个被 Michelangelo 盖起来，是一个漂亮的建筑物。
And if you look inside, it's even prettier.
那里面更漂亮。
All the most expensive things, gold and all the beautiful things, were put in there.
最漂亮、最奢华的东西都在里面当装饰品。
You cannot object to it as far as it's being art. It's beautiful art.
那如果它是个艺术品的角度而言，你绝对觉得它很棒。
The problem was where did the money come from?
但问题是这些钱哪里来的？
And this was a major reason the Reformation started.
这是其中一个重要的原因，为什么宗教改革会发生？
So people became leaders of the church not because they knew the Bible well or because they loved God or cared about the church.
那有些人开始当上教会的领袖，但并不是因为他们很爱上帝，不是因为他们很在意教会，也不是因为他们熟悉圣经。
They became leaders because they wanted money and power.
他们当教会的领袖，因为他们想要钱，想要权力。
Even today, that's what people run after.
那这也是今天人所追求的。
And most people couldn't even read the Bible because it was in Latin.
当时大部分人甚至没有办法读圣经，因为当时圣经都是拉丁文。
It's like if you were forced to read classical Chinese
就像你被强迫要读那个文言文一样，
because the language had changed.
因为语言是会改变的。
And so during the Middle Ages, people began to try to reform the church.
那在中世纪的时候，许多人就开始想要改革教会，
And a lot were killed for it.
很多人因为改革教会而被杀。
Some of the biggest reformations happened in Switzerland and in Germany.
宗教改革最大波的几个运动发生在瑞士还有德国。
And then those influenced the Reformation happened in the Netherlands and in Scotland.
那也同时影响到荷兰还有苏格兰。
And those two countries, Netherlands and Scotland, were the biggest influence on Taiwan.
那荷兰跟苏格兰是两个对台湾有最大影响的国家。
But I'm going to start with Switzerland.
那我会先讲瑞士。
I don't know if you guys studied history and geography very well in your schools.
不知道你们在学校地理历史读得怎么样？
But there's a city up above called Strasbourg. It was in France, and then right below you can see in red is Switzerland.
那在瑞士上面有一个城市叫史特拉斯堡，它在法国，那个红色的那个小小地方就是瑞士。
Switzerland is the same size as Taiwan,
瑞士跟台湾一样大，
and it's very mountainous, just like
它
Taiwan.
也跟台湾一样很多山。
And I bet Taiwanese would like to become like Switzerland and have a neutral, independent country, right?
很多台湾人会期待台湾跟瑞士一样成为一个中立的
Like
国家。
we won't bother anybody, and you just don't bother us.
我不会去惹任何人，你不要来找我麻烦就好了。
Well, one of the things that really influenced the Reformation was a new technology at that time.
当时很影响宗教改革的东西是当时的一个新科技。
It started in the city of Strasbourg, and then it went to Switzerland.
那个新的科技从史特拉斯堡先开始，然后也传到了瑞士。
It's related to books.
跟书有关。
In the Middle Ages, this is the kind of book they had.
这是中世纪一般你会看到的书。
Very beautiful.
很漂亮。
They had to do everything by hand. They wrote every page, every picture by hand.
每一页每一个字都要用手写。
Very expensive. Very few people could have books, and very few people could read.
所以非常贵，所以很少人能够有机会读书。
You know what they tried to do in Asia, right?
你知道那时候亚洲人怎么做书的吗？
They carved one page at a time, and then they put a piece of ink on it, and put a piece of paper, and rubbed it, and then they put another piece of paper like that.
他们会刻一个模板，然后那个模板一次就只能够做一页书，然后模板之后用纸铺上去，然后滚过去就一页书。
The bottom one is, I think, from the Tang Dynasty.
那下面那个我想是从唐朝来的。
Well, the Koreans invented a metal movable type.
那韩国人发明了金属的活字板。
It's Korean, it's Korean's writing, not Chinese, although it's using Chinese characters.
那其实这个是韩文，而不是中文，虽然它是汉字。
Well, it might be. Sorry, it's Koreans writing, publishing, even though at that time they used Chinese characters.
那是韩国人当时的韩国人所出版的书，那他们那时候会用汉字。
So they figured out a way, but it still wasn't very efficient.
那是一个方法，但是还是不是很有效率。
There was a man in Strasbourg named Gutenberg.
当初的史特拉斯堡有一个人叫古腾堡
And he was a metalsmith.
他是一个金属工匠。
And he designed a way to make quickly and efficiently every little letter that could be used for printing.
他那时候发明了一个很有效率的做书的方式，就是每一个字母都是独立的。
The thing that was really important wasn't just the letters.
那不只是字母很重要。
What the Koreans did not have was a mechanical machine to print.
那时候韩国人他们的印刷没有那么有效率，是因为他们没有一个机器。
And Gutenberg came up with a machine to print.
但古腾堡他发明了印刷机。
And because of where Strasbourg was, I think he was everyone thinks he was influenced by this.
那很多人都认为他是在史特拉斯堡被这个东西影响而有那个想法设计印刷机。
Do you know what this
你
is?
知道这是什么吗？
Come on. I'll give you a hint. Strasbourg, that whole area was a wine growing region.
史特拉斯堡它就是一个产葡萄酒的地方。
And that was the initial, you'll see in a minute when you see Gutenberg's press, that was the initial design idea for a machine to print pages.
你如果看它古腾堡那个印刷机的样子，你就会知道那是当时最一开始的印刷机的样子。
So I'll give you a picture of the printing press. This is an image of the printing press.
就是那个印刷机的照片。
If you see the top, there's this little screw just like on the wine press.
你看到上面有一根螺丝，就像那个压葡萄酒机是一样的。
So it just happened, the right man in the right place at the right time, and he invented this.
所以就是对的人在对的地方就发明出对的东西。
And one of his most famous things is he printed a Bible. I think this is a Latin Bible.
那他做的最有名的一件事情就是他印刷了印刷了圣经，然后它是拉丁文的。
It was very, very clear and neat compared to the handwritten ones.
所以它跟那个手写的圣经比起来，就是非常的清楚，而且字是非常正
And
式。
you could make a lot of copies.
而且你可以一次印一堆。
Everyone thinks his edition was very beautiful. This is probably the not best page, but it's an example.
那很多人都认为这个字体是非常优美的。
So by 1501,
到了1501年的时
the
候，
printing industry had gone south to that green dot, which is the town of Basel.
所以到1501年的时候，这个印刷产业就发展到另外一个城市叫巴塞尔，在下
That's
面
in Switzerland.
也是在瑞士境内。
And there were 70 different printing companies there.
当时在巴塞尔就有70家不一样
What were
的
they
印刷出版
printing?
社，
What were they printing?
他们印什么呢？
They had discovered lots of ancient Greek texts.
那他们发现了很多古典的希腊文著作，
And they also collected all the ancient Greek Bible and Hebrew Bible manuscripts.
那他们也收集到了以前的希腊文跟希伯来文原文的圣经抄本，
And they printed those.
所以他们就把它大量的印刷。
There were only about 10,000 people in the town of Basel.
那在巴塞尔这个小镇只有大概1万人口，
How many are in Sanshin? I don't know.
相信多少人不知道？
You're from Sanshin, you know that? Probably more than 10,000. Maybe more than 10,000.
三星可能比1万人还多吧。
But this had a very important university at the time.
那时候那边有一间很重要的大学，
And the students and professors all studied the ancient texts.
所以那边的教授跟学生都读了这些古典的著作。
And one of the biggest influences on the Reformation was the availability of the Greek and Hebrew Bible and other texts.
宗教改革其中一个很重要的基础原因，就是因为当时的人他们读了圣经的原文，就是希腊文跟希伯来文的圣经。
This is an example of an ancient text they collected and then they used it. This is one of the earliest texts from the book of John in the New Testament.
这个是几乎可以说是当时的人可以发现最早的新约圣经的手抄本的片段，它是新约圣经的约翰福音的片
It's
段。
only about 70 years after Jesus died that this one was written.
那这个手抄本抄写的时间呢，跟耶稣死掉的时间非常相近，只有70年。
Of course, you know, they break down over time, but they collected everything they could find and republished a new edition. The paper falls apart over time.
Oh,
And then, so they collected all the manuscripts and then reprinted a new edition.
所以当然这个手抄本那时候因为它会破掉啊，会有不同的片段，但他们就把它收集起来，然后重新的印刷更多的抄本。
This is an example of the Hebrew Old Testament.
那这个是希伯来文旧约圣经的手抄本。
You can see how it's falling apart. It's a copy.
它是那个印刷出来的希
No,
伯来
no, no,
文
no, it's a manuscript, handwritten.
希伯来文旧约圣经的手抄。
And there's a story in the New Testament, Jesus reading from the prophet Isaiah. He probably read from something like this.
那在新约圣经里面有一段历史，就是耶稣基督他在当时的会堂里面，他就公开的读旧约圣经的以赛亚书。耶稣所读的以赛亚书大概就长得跟这个差不多。
Of course, it's a lot more practical to have a book like this, right?
当然更实际一点，有这样的书是更好的。
This is actually a reprinted Hebrew Bible.
那这个是印刷的那个希伯来文圣经。
So because of all of that, there was a lot of learning in Switzerland.
所以那时候在瑞士，大家都有很好的学习。
And there's another city in Switzerland named Geneva,
另外一个瑞士的城市叫日内瓦，
and probably the most influential man at the Reformation was teaching there.
那或许在宗教改革里面最有影响力的人物，那时候就在日内瓦教书，
John Calvin.
就是约翰加尔文或者一般翻科尔文，在台湾的历史课本。
So probably if you said, who's the most influential man in European history that influenced Taiwan, you might say John Calvin was.
所以如果你问说那时候影响欧洲最有影响力的人，他也都是最影响台湾的人是谁，应该可能就是加尔文。